Hi there, my name is James Watkins. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I made the sound effects and the music for the project game Angry Bots. I'll also be telling you a little bit about how I implemented the audio into the game itself using the middleware program FMod Designer in conjunction with Unity3D. Background ambiences to me are the first thing that really immerse the player into the environment on an emotional level. And in this case I took some recordings and I processed them beyond being distinguishable, and I used the synth Absinthe to create some drones and ambient textures. I then mixed them all together to create a number of different feels. I then imported the different sound files into the different events that associated themselves with the different areas of the ship geographically. There's a number of different types of approaches I like to take when creating enemies, weapons, and explosion sounds, and they're all extremely fun. You can notice the main player's weapon, but also notice the mech bot's footsteps and weapons. I went into Pro Tools and I designed a bunch of different layers for what I felt would be appropriate and interesting for the mech bot's machinery, mechanics, and footsteps. I then layered the sound diffs in the events and had them play back with certain pitch and volume randomizations so that every time they were triggered, they would play back differently yet still sound like they were coming from the same enemy. And some of the effects, such as volume and low pass filter, were being affected by a distance parameter for how close the main player was to the angry bots. When I create weapon sounds, specifically laser or sci-fi weapon sounds, I usually like to start with a synth such as Massive for those high-frequency transient hits. I'll then take a number of different sound files of all sorts of things and start to play. I went into the studio and I recorded myself playing, so to speak, a balloon, and I really wanted to make it talk. The reason for this is I wanted to turn it into a robot's language. And how I did this was I took the original recording and I processed it and mangled it up, and then I cut it into tiny little bits. I then imported it into the sound def with some other tiny little processed recordings that I had mangled of bat vocalizations. I had these played back in shuffle and random mode so that every time it was triggered they would play back randomly and consecutively. Explosions and death explosions can be extremely enjoyable. So I went into Pro Tools and I edited numerous sound files of different types of explosions from my sound libraries, and then I designed some of them to get the specific sounds I was looking for. And then I layered them in the events to have them play back with a certain pitch and volume randomizations. The music I wanted to be orchestral and driving. I wanted to create different tensions that the player would get immersed in as they traveled throughout the station. I really wanted the music to tell a story as the player made their way through different areas of the ship. Here's a mysterious piece for stealth as the corridors are traveled. How I implemented the music was I created some environmental spheres in Unity3D. I then associated the different pieces of music that I wanted to be played in the different areas of the ship. Here's an example of the character moving from one sphere into another sphere. And then back again. So the point for me is to create really dynamic sound effects and music that can immerse the user and really take them somewhere different. Many thanks again to Leonard J. Paul and the School of Video Game Audio.